Welcome to our Basic Rigging Principles course about hazards and risks. Your job involves rigging. Before we can talk about how to rig safely, it's important to understand what it is and the hazards it involves. By the end of this course, you will be able to recall the purpose of rigging and recognize hazards associated with rigging. What do we mean when we say rigging? Rigging is the process of using specialized equipment to connect heavy loads to lifting or moving equipment, such as cranes, hoists, pulleys, and trucks. The purpose is to transport loads, such as beams, frames, trees, and machinery, from one location to another. Sometimes, you may hear people refer to the specialized equipment we use to connect loads to lifting and moving equipment as rigging. This may include slings, cables, or wire ropes, chains, and more. People who perform rigging calculate the weight and balance of the object they need to lift. Then, they choose and use appropriate equipment, such as wire ropes, pulleys, and machinery like cranes, to safely move the load to a designated place. Rigging activities may involve lifting extremely heavy loads at great heights or maneuvering large objects through narrow or confined spaces. The goal of all rigging activities is to safely move objects from one place to another. You can imagine all the industries in which moving heavy objects is part of the job. A construction site might need to move large concrete pipes or place prefabricated walls. In manufacturing and industrial settings, we may need to use rigging to place and assemble large items, like vehicles or ships. We may use rigging to move heavy materials when we build bridges during road construction. Commercial industries, such as oil, gas, mining, and telecommunications, may need to move heavy materials or equipment for production and connection. In transportation, we may use rigging to load and unload materials onto and off of trains and ships, or even move trains and ships themselves. We even use rigging in the entertainment industry, as professionals build sets or move heavy lighting equipment or cameras. For which task is rigging most appropriate? It's okay if you aren't sure. Your selection isn't tracked, and we'll explain the answer. Since rigging involves lifting heavy objects and moving them to a designated place, rigging may expose workers to fall hazards, struck by and crushing hazards, including pinching injuries or amputations, and electrical hazards. Being aware of these hazards is the first step to making safe choices so that you can avoid them. Only qualified people are allowed to perform rigging activities, and they have the training and experience required to account for these hazards. Let's explore each hazard in more detail. When you are rigging or guiding loads, or just watching a rigging procedure, your attention may be on the load instead of the area around you. This can expose you to fall hazards, such as uneven surfaces that can cause trips, wet or slippery surfaces that can cause feet or hands to slip from loads or walking surfaces, obstructions that may trip people, or unprotected sides, openings or holes over which people may fall. Since rigging is about moving loads, you must be aware of struck by and crushing hazards. For example, incorrect planning and calculations could cause equipment, such as cranes, to tip over onto people or objects. If people fail to properly select and inspect rigging equipment, such as slings, wire ropes, and hooks, it can fail, causing loads to drop and lines and attachments to whip around or fly through the air, striking people. Of course, equipment failure can also cause loads to fall. If people are below them, they can be crushed and killed. Moving parts, loads, and equipment can strike people or objects. They may even swing and pin people between the load and stationary objects, such as equipment or walls. Imagine what could happen when rigging activities are near power lines. If the equipment or load touches energized lines, people could be shocked or electrocuted. Failure to properly ground tools and equipment can also cause electrical hazards, as can defective tools or cables. Think about how various factors can increase the risks associated with these hazards. The environment plays a part. If it is raining, visibility may be limited, and surfaces may be slick. Windy conditions can cause loads to swing. Imbalanced or unstable loads are more likely to fall or cause equipment failure. Oddly shaped loads may be harder to secure and balance. It's important to note that weather hazards are a significant concern when people are moving heavy loads. Predicted or changing weather conditions may make it necessary to suspend or reschedule rigging operations. There are documented cases in which people were moving heavy loads during high winds that resulted in the crane boom breaking or the entire crane tipping over. Lightning is also a concern. It is attracted to tall structures and equipment. When the structure or equipment is made of metal, the electricity will be conducted through it and may electrocute people in contact with it. Follow your employer's guidelines about what to do when storms are nearby. Even if there isn't any rain, if you can hear thunder, lightning is already present and close enough to strike you. Speaking of rain, rain and storm water can cause rigging equipment to slip. When that happens, loads can shift, swing, or fall. Choose the words that best complete these statements about the hazards associated with rigging. You should now be able to recall the purpose of rigging and recognize hazards associated with rigging.